I asked you for your top five flying Kiwis right now, but there was a recent development that is quite interesting considering we do talk a fair bit of shit about the big old US of A and their sporting exploits and their sporting situations, but youngster, and sorry, part of that shit talking was less Kiwis going to play in the USA Women's League, as well as less Kiwis using the college football soccer pathway, as had previously been the case. But then, as we are recording, youngster Millie Clegg, she is off to join Racing Louisville. And this is interesting because you talked around the intrigue for Millie Clegg a couple of times. Where's she going to end up? Wasn't she meant to be with the Western? Is that her? Western Sydney Wanderers?
Yeah, she was with Western Sydney Wanderers, and she was the one who she couldn't play until her 18th birthday, which was a couple weeks into the season, because you can't sign prior to that with an overseas club, even though she was changing from a team that was in the same league. She played for the Phoenix all last season. But then, so she couldn't play for the first two or three games. And then in the game when she could play, she started, looked a little bit rusty, took a bunch of shots, wasn't quite her clinical self, but then had a collision with the goalkeeper where I think she injured her hamstring, goes off, and then nothing. Heard nothing. Western Sydney never updated us on what the issue was. There was implied that it might be out for a while, but that was like second, third hand information. Now we know from some of the press releases about today's news that she injured her hamstring, was about to return, then re-injured the same hamstring, and then now they've just decided, well, you were going to go to America after the season anyway, because apparently this was a deal that was sort of in the works, not since she first signed for Western Sydney, but after, and to where they were like, well, you just see out the Western Sydney season and then come join us, kind of thing. Well, she had already been released early, and I read this in the newsletter on Friday, I think, or one of the Friday or Monday. Kind of like putting some clues together. It seems to be like she'd put a post on Instagram of a bunch of pictures from her time in Sydney, which seems to be past tense. And then all these Western Sydney players are in the comments being like, miss you, miss you, miss you. Okay, well, obviously she's not there anymore. So it just sounds like, okay, she's back. She's back in New Zealand, probably rehabbing, not going to return before the end of the season. Let's see how it goes. Well, it turns out there was something else in the works because now she's signed with Racing Louisville. And you know what the coolest thing about this is? We'll get into some of this pathway stuff in a sec, but Racing Louisville, that's Abby Erceg's club. So there's two Kiwis at the same team, which is always nice for streamlining the coverage. I find is don't have to learn the ins and outs of a third NWSL side, and that's obviously going to be a massive help for Millie Clegg in settling into a new team, is to have like a compatriot and probably her country's greatest ever player as a teammate and a leader within that group. I'd say that's a pretty convenient aspect of this move as well.
Would this enter your top five flying Kiwis or not?
Oh, it'd go close. I kind of didn't think I kind of because it changes so much. It fluctuates on who's playing and who's at what club, and then a transfer changes everything, and then mid seasons ending change everything. So I kind of just picked it as a snapshot of this moment in time, the top five. So I wasn't really considering the American players because they're off season at the moment, but yeah, it would go close, especially if I can make it a Millie Clegg and Abby Erceg tandem. Then suddenly it would go extremely close, and say that Racing Louisville duo is, one at the end of her career and one at the start of her career, but our greatest ever player, and then someone who has the potential to be one of our best ever players. Yeah, that'd go high on the list, and it is an interesting one because it's a Kiwi player getting amongst the American League, which is a pathway that's been tricky to get to. But it's been tricky to get to because of how rarely they sign international players. And New Zealanders are obviously competing with players from every other country in the world to get those international spots in NWSL teams. So they just have like that league. There's nothing wrong with that league and the standard of that league. It's very high. It's one of the best in the world. And Abby Erceg's long time dominance and that level is one of the glorifying aspects of her career. But it's just there wasn't really a pathway to get there for Kiwi players. And the one that's supposed to be that pathway, the draft, well, only one New Zealander's ever been drafted. And the latest group of them, like you had, Gabby Rennie's just finished college, right? And she's played 20 plus caps for New Zealand. She didn't even bother registering for the draft. Like there were no New Zealanders even registered for the NWSL draft this year, which just shows no one. It's not going to go there. It's not going to work. Like it's not a valid pathway. It's better off to go somewhere else and maybe get a roundabout contract, or you can just be Millie Clegg and be so good that you don't go to college at all, because you get at the age where you would be going to a NCAA team, you just sign straight with the pros anyway because you're already that good. Like she skipped 4 years of potential development to sign with Louisville, and we'll see how much she plays. Like she might be treated as like the youth striker in the team. First year or two, it's just development to see how you progress, and you never know how that unfolds. She might also be someone who gets minutes straight away. I don't know. Like we'll see how that goes. But yeah, forget about the college stuff. She's managed to skip that pathway out entirely and just go straight to the top, which is massive. Like this is a genuinely huge move. This is equivalent to signing with a top flight English or French or Italian or whatever club, which only the very best current football firms have been able to do in recent years, and well, in recent years / ever. Big deal, big move for Millie Clegg, and stoked for this one, hyped for this one.
Let's roll through your top 5 flying Kiwis then, and you might need to hit the old H&F hard and fast so we can get into some Wellington Phoenix. So don't need your full deep in the mangroves context for this top 5.
I won't give the full career roundups or anything like that. We'll just like I said, the snapshot, the moment in time where they're at right now. We'll try to stick to that.
Focus on why they are hot right now. How about that? So your top 5.
Yeah.
Do you want me to introduce them, or are you just going to rattle them off?
Oh, either way.
Let's go with the big woodsman, C. Wood. Woodchopper pioneer, Nottingham Forest's greatest ever striker, Chris Wood. What do you reckon?
I reckon enough that I'm going to try write a full specific piece about him this week, probably thinking probably tomorrow, and that will highlight largely the way in which he's absolutely gone to a new level since the managerial change at Nottingham Forest, where he was sort of under Steve Cooper. He had a manager who liked him, who respected him, who gave him opportunities. But under Nuno Espirito Santo, he's got a manager who treats him as a key player, and he has played every single minute since Nuno came in. Every single minute. Like a guy who was alternating between occasional starts, always getting subbed off, sometimes just 5 minutes at the end of games. Not just for Forest, but with Newcastle before that as well. Now he's the dude who's playing every minute of every game, including in the FA Cup as well. They had a game against Blackpool. He played 90 minutes. They had a replay against Blackpool. He played 120 minutes and scored the winner deep in that extra time period. He's played 90 minutes in all 4 Premier League games under Nuno, and his numbers have boosted compared to what he was doing. Even just when you compare it to per minutes, just get a ratio so it's not, misleading by the fact that he's only played a few games under the new manager. Get them comparing what he's doing per 90 minutes under each. And I wrote a bit of this in the, in fact, I even included a sneaky little table screenshotted from an Excel spreadsheet in the email yesterday for people who want to go deeper into that. But he's the contributions have risen. He's a key player. He's scoring goals. He's got 1 assist under Nuno, but it feels like he should have more because his sort of hold up and layoff game is fantastic. And it's not just a case of being in the right place at the right time a few times to score some goals. He's also creating stuff for others around him. I think he's playing as well as he has played, at least since he was at Burnley. And I've been a big defender of how he played at Newcastle and at Forest before this. But specifically, this is what happens when you go all in on Chris Wood and get the best out of him. He's being given an opportunity to play to his maximum potential, and he's shown that in recent weeks. He's been great.
Maybe the Breakers could learn from going all in on a Kiwi, and the results speak for themselves. Next, we've got Katie Bowen, who I believe plays for Inter Milan. Is that correct?
That is correct. Internazionale.
Why
And
is she a top 5 flying Kiwi right now?
she is a top 5 flying Kiwi right now because that Italian league is pretty strong. Inter aren't like the best of the best. Roma and Juventus are kind of have pulled away from the pack in recent years. They're clearly the two best teams in Italy, and then Fiorentina are pretty good. Inter are probably around about that fourth or fifth range, but that's a good solid team and a good solid league. And I feel like I got to hype up Katie Bowen a little bit more because I think the fact she's gone straight in there on the back of a World Cup where I thought she was New Zealand's best player at the World Cup, and now looks like she's someone who, frankly, if Ellie Riley retires sometime soon, which might be the case, I suspect Katie Bowen is a significant candidate to be the next captain of the Football Ferns. I think she's a locked on for someone who's a converted centre back as well. I just feel like that what she's doing there to go straight to Inter Milan and just automatically be a regular starter for them, playing pretty much every game for a good solid team at a very high level. I just feel like that's easy to get swept under the rug a little bit, especially when it's not in a league with a English language coverage and whatnot. Although good highlight packages after every game, I like that. Always makes it easy to cover the sports that actually put up good, not just 2-minute highlights, which is only the goals as well, but nice little 5-minute segments. So Katie Bowen just got to respect a Football Ferns icon right now at this moment in time.
An elite who I believe plays for Aston Villa. So why is a goalkeeper playing for Aston Villa in your top 5 flying Kiwis right now?
Because I think we might have reached a point at the previous Football Ferns window where they played Colombia and Elite played both games ahead of Vickers, and neither of them are first choice starters at their clubs, but Elite plays at a higher level and does get those cup gains for Aston Villa. Looks like maybe Elite's nudged ahead in the number 1 status, which would be sort of a culmination of what we kind of knew was coming one day from the point at which she was like 15, I think. She first played for the Football Ferns. I think she was 14 when she debuted for the national team, and then she also played at an under-17 and under-20 World Cup in the same year. One of a few players, and that was the under-17 World Cup where they went and finished third, and she was the star player. And from that year onwards, it's been like, well, this is a top-tier prodigy. Like the same stuff we say about Millie Clegg, this was Anna Elite 5 years ago. Well, now Anna Elite seems to be sort of at the culmination of that, where it feels like she's at the age she is, which is only like 22. Like now she might be the Football Ferns starting goalkeeper for the next decade. So while this is a little bit of a nudge because she's not necessarily playing every single week and she, nailing things down in that way, she is at least playing semi-regularly at a very high level. And I did also just write a big roundup of the under-17 World Cup, like looking back at that bronze medal team from 2018. So that has been in my head, which is also a reason why I picked Anna Elite, because she's been in stark focus for me recently.
We are the sons of Sarpreet, so it makes sense that Sarpreet Singh is in your top 5 flying Kiwis right now. Why else is Sarpreet Singh so interesting?
Yeah, this is another one of those intrigue over performance ones, because he barely played in the first half of the season. He's had a couple of years ravished by injury, and is just his career in general since he went to Bayern Munich is kind of, it's not quite worst case scenario, but he's had no luck along the way. Like the injuries he's had, the bad loans, just the bad timing, things have gone against him, which wasn't in his control, have been frustrating. And then you see him play for the All Whites against Ireland the other week, and he was just the best player on the park. And you're like, yeah, the talent is so immense, and he's such a key player for New Zealand as well. And just game-breaking creativity, the kind of thing we lack so much, and he provides an enormous quantity of that. We just need him fit, playing regularly, and from a position where he'd had no luck, he's starting to get a little bit of luck at Hansa Rostock, where they brought in a new manager who happened to be his old manager, who got the best out of him for Jan Regensburg for a little while there. And then he has that little spell of friendly games over the winter break where he plays the second half and scores a goal, comes off the bench. Does he score a goal? I think he set up a goal. Then he gets an assist in the next game, and then the game after that is another winter friendly, starting this time and leading us into the end of the winter break. And then they come back for the first game of the new year, first competitive game of the new year, and he's made that starting lineup. They lost 3-0. Wasn't good. Like, didn't get anything to say out of it specifically, but there is a very intriguing journey, like trajectory, that he's been on in terms of revitalizing his career over the last, I don't know, month, and basically since that All Whites versus Ireland game, really. And that's where the intrigue comes from. That's the kind of thing I'm trying to follow and get on board with, because the Sons of Sarpreet, we need Lord Sarpreet back. Father Sarpreet, I suppose, if it's Sons of Sarpreet. Daddy Sarps.
Well, in Game of Thrones, there was no senior figure. You know, the Sons of the Harpy, they just rolled around and
yeah, it was
everyone,
more like a symbolic. Yeah.
So that's what we do in honor of Sarpreet Singh, big man ting. Shout out to you. Our last flying Kiwi in your top 5 is Jackie Hand, who plays for Louisville FC. Had a good World Cup, bit of razzle dazzle as a striker. What's up with Jackie Hand?
Yeah, I think they go with Lewis, even though it's not spelt like that. I think that's the pronunciation, because Lewis is a little bit too too on the nose for a team that's trying to avoid relegation this season. But that's why they signed Jackie Hand. And Jackie Hand, who, again, one of those players, went to the universities in the United States, had a pretty solid uni career as well, which not a lot of even some of our better players don't actually get that many minutes. And she was pretty solid throughout. Put a name in the hat for the NWSL draft, didn't get picked. Instead, just goes over to Ireland United, as a couple years in the Finland division, consistently giving goals and assists out there, looking good. Becomes a bit of a key player for the Football Ferns. Great World Cup, looked our best attacking player in that tournament. And now is at the stage where she needs that next step of her career. Signs with Lewis, made a debut over the weekend. Sounds like she was pretty bright, pretty sharp. Hopefully the highlights are up now. They weren't up yesterday for me to see, but there was a replay on FA Player, but who's got time for that? Sounds like she was pretty solid, pretty decent, and they scraped away with a draw. It wasn't great, and they're still building up her minutes because she's coming from an off-season situation, so she only played about an hour, but key attacking player for the Football Ferns in a new situation, trying to take that next step in her career. Always going to be intriguing, and we're right at the start of those steps. That's exciting as well.